where champions rise, pushing limits in the oval till we touch the skies. Racing in the grind, couple legends of me. The esports oval league driving the arcade. Racing in the grind, couple legends of me. The esports oval league driving the arcade. Under the lights, engines roar, we're ready to go. The esports oval league with the best race to show. Grinding gears, chasing dreams on the virtual track. No looking in the rear view, there's no turning back. Every lap it's a battle, every corner's a fight. Precision in the daytime, adrenaline at night. The Grind Cup Series, championship and mission. The goal we all crave, speed and skill define the legends we raise. Racing in the Grind Cup, we're burning the turns. Throttle wide open, feel the engines churn. It's the heart of the league where champions rise, pushing limits in the oval till we touch the sky. Plus a green flag to checkered, it's a razor thin edge, pushing harder with each second, living on the ledge, drafting on the straightaway, bumper to bumper. A split second mistake and you're going under. Pit stops, time, perfect strategy in hand. Every driver, every team takes a bold stand. In the world of esports, this is where we collide. The Grind Cup unites us with passion and pride. Racing in the Grind Cup, we're burning the turns. Throttle wide open, feel the engines churn. It's the heart of the league where champions rise, pushing limits in the oval till we touch the skies. The tires screech, hearts pound, adrenaline's fire. Lap by lap, chasing that finish line desire. Rookies and legends all fight for the crown, but only one will take the title down. Every lap it's a battle, every corner's a fight. Precision in the daytime, adrenaline at night. The Grind Cup Series, championship and mission. The goal we all crave, speed and skill define the legends we raise. Racing in the Grind Cup, we're burning the turns. Throttle wide open, feel the engines churn. It's the heart of the league where champions rise, pushing limits in the oval till we touch the skies. From the green flag to checkered, it's a razor thin edge, pushing harder with each second, living on the ledge, drafting on the straightaway, bumper to bumper. A split second mistake and you're going under. From the green flag to checkered, it's a razor thin edge, pushing harder with each second, living on the ledge, drafting on the straightaway, bumper to bumper. A split second mistake and you're going under. Pit stops, time, perfect strategy in hand. Every driver, every team takes a bold stand. In the world of esports, this is where we collide. The Grind Cup unites us with passion and pride. Racing in the Grind Cup, we're burning the turns. Throttle wide open, feel the engines churn. It's the heart of the league where champions rise, pushing limits in the oval till we touch the skies. So here's to the racers, the oval league's pride. Through every twist and turn we ride or die. In the Grind Cup Series we find who we are, chasing glory and victory beneath the virtual stars. Racing in the Grind Cup, we're burning the turns. Throttle wide open, feel the engines churn. It's the heart of the league where champions rise, pushing limits in the oval till we touch the skies. Racing in the Grind Cup, we're legends of me. The esports oval league driving the arcade. Racing in the Grind Cup, we're legends of me. The esports oval league driving the arcade. Under the lights, engines roar, we're ready to go. The esports oval league with the best race to show. Grinding gears, chasing dreams on the virtual track. No looking in the rear view, there's no turning back. Every lap it's a battle, every corner's a fight. Precision in the daytime, adrenaline at night. The Grind Cup Series, championship and mission. The goal we all crave, speed and skill define the legends we raise. Racing in the Grind Cup, we're burning the turns. Throttle wide open, feel the engines churn. It's the heart of the league where champions rise, pushing limits in the oval till we touch the skies. Plus a green flag to checkered, it's a razor thin edge, pushing harder with each second, living on the ledge, drafting on the straightaway, bumper to bumper. A split second mistake and you're going under. Pit stops, time, perfect strategy in hand. Every driver, every team takes a bold stand. In the world of esports, this is where we collide. The Grind Cup unites us with passion and pride. Racing in the Grind Cup, we're burning the turns. Throttle wide open, feel the engines churn. It's the heart of the league where champions rise, pushing limits in the oval till we touch the skies. The tires screech, hearts pound, adrenaline's fire. Lap by lap, chasing that finish line desire. Rookies and legends all fight for the crown, but only one will take the
And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome here to the Flatout Racing Network's continued coverage of the 2025 season for the ESports Oval League's Grind Cup Series. Coming off the off week, we are ready for our second road course stop of the season as we are here in upstate New York, ready to go racing at the Glen. Watkins Glen International. First traditional road course, if you will. Our first lefts and rights were in the streets of Chicago. I'm Seth Cole, alongside my broadcast colleague Scott Rankin. And Scott, obviously, when there's basically stock car racing, it doesn't matter how much experience you've got. Two road courses that normally you've got at least some experience in that are Sonoma and Watkins Glen. More so, maybe, the latter than the former. However, this track's not without the pitfalls. You've got the next-gen car that the drivers are here doing, that they're trying to maneuver their way around this racetrack with here tonight. What are some of the key things we're going to be looking at during the course of this race?
Well, number one is getting your tires up to temperature and up to pressure. I was just watching Kyle Holden because he's sort of going to be my marker for how to attack qualifying. And the biggest thing I noticed about Kyle is that he's actually got an off track on both of his qualifying laps. Kyle's going to have to come from the rear. He's quick. He was quick last time out at the Chicago Street Course. But the big thing is tire temperatures. When we come to these road courses, we use a harder tire compound. What that means is the tire doesn't flex. It doesn't press itself into the ground anywhere near as much. And a softer compound, effectively, the composition of the rubber, it's actually softer. You can squish it a fair bit more. You take two different tires. You ever grab two different chunks of tires and one of them is a little bit more squidgy than the other? Well, that squidgier tire that can flex and move around, it can spread itself into the road surface better, provides more grip. But the problem is when you've got a more flexible surface like that is it wears away a lot quicker. So what they've done with the tire compound for these road course cars is that they've firmed the compound up a lot. And, well, that just means that the grip sensitivity is a lot lower. It also takes quite a while for these tires to come around, to come up to temperature at Watkins Glen as well, because it's quite a short lap time, only a minute and 11, a minute and 12 seconds or so. So it's very difficult to get the tires into their usable range and get those pressures up and stabilized. So you're actually going to see guys making mistakes in qualifying here.
Something that I was noticing as well in practice, and again, a lot of times it's hard to gauge because you got drivers that are out there trying to go hard, get the qualifying lap in preparation for when Q eventually rolls around. But this Watkins Glen, there's a lot of runoff area, specifically off of turn 1. You've got runoff there coming out of, I believe it's turn 6. A lot of opportunity out of the carousel as well to be able to generate a little bit more speed in preparation for the next corner. Is it worth venturing out there, though? Because I saw a lot of cars getting very snappy loose.
Well, the car's going to get snappy loose even on the regular road surface. So, yes, in specific locations. So, one of the things is, in terms of qualifying trim, you can't use the runoff area at turn 1. About the only usable runoff area is actually the exit of the carousel on your qualifying laps. So, that's really the only space you can use. Coincidentally, it's actually the best place to try and gain and use up a little bit of time. There's a lot of bumps out there. Traditional racing surface is actually smooth, so it's a lot more compliant to the tire. We hear a lot of talk with these next-gen cars about keeping that rear diffuser very, very stable and supplying itself with really, really good downforce at the rear end of the car through the Venturi tunnels underneath. And effectively, if you're going over those bumps, you just don't have a surface that's compliant, conducive to generating grip. So that's one of the things you've got to be careful, you've got to be aware of. But there is speed to be found out there. You know, you can carry a lot more, you can get back to the throttle harder and earlier, and if you can balance the car out across that surface, there is a little bit of time to be gained, but it's not much.
60 laps here tonight in this one. Of course, we have the stages as well. Stage 1 completed at the end of lap 15. Stage 2 completed at the end of lap 30. But the biggest thing is no stage cautions, so we're running all the way through this race, potentially green flag from start to finish. We've been told that there will be a caution thrown if there's a track blocking incident, but for the most part, you drivers have to kind of settle in for a 60-lap endurance race. What does that do in terms of varying strategies, especially when we get towards the end of these stages? Does that in any way interfere in some type of strategy being played, maybe an undercut to get stage points, or does that not make much of a difference in terms of the original approach to this racetrack and the 60 laps?
It doesn't change a huge deal up, Seth, because realistically, the best way to get stage points tonight is going to be to stay out. About the only time there's going to be an undercut is potentially before the end of stage 2, but it's all about staying out to get those stage points here tonight. In terms of what is that going to do to our drivers? Well, it's difficult. It's focus. There is intensity. That intensity is not going to go away at any stage. So they've got to keep the focus and the intensity up. Mistakes can and will be punished over the long run. So you've got to make sure that you're smooth, you're consistent, and that tire heat's not going to go away. We'll probably have the field or a good number of the drivers not elect to take tires at any point throughout the duration tonight. It just takes too long to actually get the tires back up to temperature. And that is where you lose all of the ground.
Saw both Kyle Holden and Alan Dobbs up in the top 5 during the practice session in terms of speeds, and their battle continues to be hot and heavy. Of course, we had that off week, but back at Pocono, we saw Alan Dobbs take the points lead from Kyle Holden. 9 points separate those two coming into this race. And of course, for Alan Dobbs as well, coming off 2 wins in a row at Iowa and Pocono, his 3rd win on the season. That now puts him at the top of the mountain statistically in the wins column. Kyle Holden, 1 win behind him with 2, but you mentioned about the fact that he was the winner at the first road course stop back in the streets of Chicago, so you were the guy that almost was able to snipe the victory away from him at the Chicago street course when he had that mess up on the final lap. What are we thinking here? Is the chase on for the 59 here again, or do you think this is a racetrack where it's a little bit more of a level playing field? Because I'm seeing some other names that we didn't necessarily see up inside the top 5. Granted, they were around in the top 10, like 6 back through 12th in that Chicago street course race, but some names are popping up here in practice and in qualifying that we maybe didn't have on our list of ones to watch coming into tonight based off of the Chicago race.
Yeah, I mean, Mark Gonzalez actually Mark, I think, ran into trouble very, very early at Chicago. We didn't really get to see, but his pace wasn't quite as good. And the thing about Chicago is that it saps confidence out of drivers because those walls are so close. It's very conducive. You'll see drivers that may do well at other road courses. They'll actually not do so well at a street course just because they would rather just have a quiet night. They're not willing to take risks. And that's okay. That's a great strategy to take at street courses. You know, that's pretty good. That's a pretty good way to hack it and change things up. So Mark's obviously got some confidence level here. You mentioned there's guys that at Watkins, Glen, they're always going to jump up and jump to the fore. I think Mark's one of those. Dobbs is there and thereabouts, so you know he'll be looking for just a clean race. He'll be just looking for a mistake-free race. He's quick enough to pull away from the cars that are actually behind him, but he's not necessarily quick enough to stay with the guys that are ahead. So his night's going to be all about just smooth, consistent, put the points on the board. You know, not too much more than that. But yeah, it's going to be just for everyone to lock in.
Yeah, limit the mistakes. I think a big key point that you mentioned there, of course, we've talked about it. No faster pair for drivers to be able to lean on anymore. And while this racetrack does have a little bit more space, it's not quite as confined as Chicago Street Course is. There are a lot of areas you can run into trouble and potentially end your day. A lot of tire barriers around this racetrack, a lot of sand gravel pit areas where you could end up getting off track, and that's not going to slow the car down at all. That's going to, if anything, speed it up towards an Armco barrier or a tire barrier. So keep all 4 wheels on the racing surface and you may come away with a pretty decent day at the Glen. As Mark Gonzalez, as you mentioned, we didn't really get to see a whole lot of the speed out of him at the Chicago Street Course, but lays down a great qualifying lap to capture his first pole of the season. As we're waiting for everybody to get up, looks like 21 cars going to take the green flag in this one here tonight. Let's talk about one of the areas of the racetrack, Watkins Glen, that really gets a lot of attention, and that's the bus stop over on the back straight of this particular road course. I don't think we'll necessarily see people go double wide through there, but drivers can run into trouble just going through there by themselves, maybe miss that apex. How much difficulty do you think it's going to be for the drivers here this evening, or do you think it's not going to be as much of a factor as we might originally think?
The biggest thing about the bus stop is keeping the rear underneath you. Like when we talk about a lot of those short track races, it was always about trying to keep the rear end underneath you. Pretty much very similar here. The big thing with the bus stop is cars are bottoming out. we talked about loss of downforce over bumps. Well, the bus stop, you've got to, if you're not attacking those big curbs, and they are giant curbs, they are huge curbs. If you're not attacking them, you have no lap speed.
Take a look at our starting lineup here tonight. Go ahead. An eye on the 92 of Ryan Catalano. He was up there in the top 5 speeds during practice. Good starting track position. What about track position? Because you mentioned about Kyle Holden having his issue in qualifying. Notice our Daytona winner, Chris restarting back deep in the field. Noah Jackson as well. How easy is it going to be for drivers that far back to be able to make up track position, especially here in the early going?
Track position is actually really, really great. It's actually very difficult to get an overtake done here, because the speed difference that you need on a car to get the overtake done, you're basically going to be looking for, you're pretty much looking for a mistake from the driver ahead. So it's going to be about pestering them in the mirror, seeing what you can do, to basically force that mistake. So it's track position's really, really important, but setting up that overtake, I think for Kyle, the best that he can possibly hope for here tonight, he's going to look for a little bit of luck to get any higher, but if he can get to the top 5, that's a great night, starting at the back end of the field. So you can cut your way through the field, but he's just never going to... The big thing is the field separation. You remember, he's back there behind guys that are 4 or 5 seconds a lap off the pace, or maybe not that far, 3 to 4 seconds a lap off the pace. He's behind them for 3 or 4 laps. He's going to lose a chunk. Lap 1, the further you are back in the field, everyone's going to bottle up to go through the chicane. So he's going to be 20 seconds off the lead 5 laps in. That's just very natural for road course racing. That's the difference between it and oval racing, really. So that's the difficulty he's got to overcome, which means he's got to run a second a lap faster for 20 laps to catch those guys. That's just not going to happen.
Keeping an eye on that 59, starting this race outside of the top 10, but off of turn 7. Pace car makes the right-hand turn onto pit road. It'll be the Budweiser Chevrolet Camaro of Mark Gonzalez who'll get us under the green. We're back racing in the Grind Cup Series tonight at the Glen.
Oh boy. Cold tires. Cold tires.
Woo!
Very cold tires. She just does not want to grip up at all.
And early troubles there for Scott with those cold tires, as he alluded to. I believe a couple of drivers, well, one driver, I believe, started from pit road. I wondered about a couple of others that were not on the grid taking the green. I did not see CJ Papa, nor did I see the 00 of Fritas. I wondered if they might also potentially start from pit road, but we have yet to see the 13 or the 00 make their way out onto the racetrack as Gonzalez leads the field out of the carousel turn 5, headed for the left-hand turn 6. Dobbs slots into second. Trey Whitehead now in third place.
Yeah, and the difficulty will be just trying to get these tires up to temperature. The rear end does not want to rotate, Seth. It does not want to... It's got a certain amount of yaw, and as the tire comes in, it can rotate a fair bit more. It's quite balanced. It can do those sorts of things. But, you know, you got to get to that lap, and you saw probably a bunch of guys take a little bit easier into turn 1 because they just had to keep the rear end underneath them. The difficulty I had into turn 1, the car tipped in really, really nicely, and then the second phase, it didn't like it. So I had to counter steer, because once that car goes, it's gone. So that's the difficult part. There's very little window to actually bring it back. So the difficult part was I saved it, and then there's a bunch of bumps. We were talking about the bumps in qualifying. There's a bunch of bumps out and across that outside curb. So it's a risk, and it just didn't pay out.
Saw the 38 of Dylan McDonald also come to pit lane. Might have gotten a piece of you there.
He did.
And he's coming down for some damage repair also as Alan Dobbs. You talked about him just trying to have a clean race, looking for 3 wins in a row as he looks ahead at Mark Gonzalez on board with the 35. Watch the panel there. If you look at the yellow numbering On that bottom column, second from the right, you can see the gears that the drivers are going to be shifting into, down to second gear, it looks like, here in these heavy braking zone corners. I believe the highest area where they would get up to the highest gear would be heading down towards the bus stop, and of course that straightaway headed for turn 6. Probably get up to 5th gear. I don't know if necessarily they'd get up to that 6th gear or not.
No, they don't have 6 gears.
Oh, they don't have 6 gears, that's right.
5th gear, the only time you'll be using it's just before the bus stop. That's the only time on the track. Other than that, you're going to be using 2nd or 3rd. Most of the drivers in the field are going to be using 2nd through the bulk of the corners. And for some that are able to carry it, you can use 3rd gear off the exit of the carousel, and through turn 6 is the other spot you can use 3rd gear. Everywhere else is going to be 2nd gear.
Gosh, you talked about the bumps, and you can hear it with this onboard with the 35, just the thud, especially going through the bus stops there. Can that in any way hurt the equipment underneath the race car, affect how that car runs for like the entirety of this run, or is that just basically a sound effects thing?
Yeah, look, I mean, it is definitely there. In some cars it can cause damage. A lot of the prototypes are very, and particularly GT cars, if they take a huge whack to the floor of the car, it will slow them significantly, because these cars do generate a lot of their downforce, but they're safe. They're fairly rigid. The cars have got enough strength down there that they'll actually be okay. But the other side of the coin is you can not use as much of the chicane as those around you. And the problem is, you'll be 0.3 of a second slower a lap. It's in one section of the track, but it's also lining yourself up. The big key with how you attack these corners is you've got to line yourself up. You've got to set yourself up to approach those sections of the bus stop. You can see with Kyle, he's timing how much of the curb he's using. He's definitely using a lot of it, but it's when he hits the curb and what he's doing with that when he gets there.
Started 14th, has picked up 7 spots since the drop of the green flag, now to 7th. Looking to reel in the 77 of Patrick McQuaid. Good battle brewing for the 4th position. Ryan Catalano has it. Jeffrey Kleinsma trying to close up on him. Both drivers up inside of the top 5. Got a lot of people that popped up in our YouTube feed when we came on the air here. We got Jason Awesome Fods. Appreciate you tuning in. Nicholas Schaefer said not to count out Zach Davies. Got some unfortunate news for the 32 fans camp. Davies is currently on pit road, currently 2 laps down. Must have run into an issue in the opening stages of this race as well. Unscheduled pit stop for him. And, we talk about, keeping the car on the racing surface, not running into trouble, with the fact that there's pretty much no guaranteed cautions that'll come out during the course of this race. Not much opportunity to be able to salvage the race. Now it's a matter of basically just get the car fixed as best as you can, get out there, log some laps, and hope it's a race of attrition and you can pick up some spots before the checkered flag waves.
The thing about this one, Seth, as well, for those guys that are down the back, it is important to pick up points. There is a lot of, we've already talked, these cars are difficult to drive on the harder tire compound. So actually making sure that you hang on to the car and you make it across the duration is very, very critical. Like you said, I qualified in the front row and I'm already on pit lane. So there's an opportunity to put a car into the playoffs today that's certainly thrown away. So for a lot of these other guys, they're out here and the big goal for them will be points racing. And we don't have a full field here. So there's an opportunity to stick a boatload of points over a bunch of cars in the field. That's a huge opportunity. They cannot say no to that opportunity to the points. So make sure that you run all the laps. Make sure that you log all the laps. Doesn't matter what speed that you're running. It's good enough. That's the big takeaway.
That is a fantastic point, because just running down through even drivers in the top 15 in points that are not in the field here tonight. DJ Daniels, 4th in the standings. Sean Lauder, 8th in points. Brandon Cooper, 13th in the standings. I mean, like you said, there is huge opportunity for drivers like a Mark Gonzalez, who comes into this race 16th in points to, I don't know exactly just how much he could make up in terms of a net gain points-wise if he were to able to, say, sweep the stages tonight, win this race. Obviously, it would lock him in through a win, but just in moving up through the overall point standings, it's not impossible that we may see him, when we go to Bristol next week, up inside the top 10 in the overall standings. That's a real possibility if he can completely dominate this race here tonight.
Yeah, and I mean, he's got every opportunity to as well. The passes are going to be made through those pit stops, which is definitely like undercut, overcut. It's not going to be tire undercut. It's not going to be tire overcut. What it's going to be is the difference between having a clear track in front of you versus, you know, a guy that's in front of you that's potentially holding you up. But for Mark at the moment, the biggest thing for him is that he's just got to work his way through. Let's log them off. Let's target lap numbers. Let's get to lap 20. Right, that's it. That's his first situation. Let's get to lap 20. Let's get the first pit stop out of the way. Let's get to lap 40. Let's get the second pit stop out of the way, and that's going to be our fuel distance here tonight as well. Those are going to be the critical markers that he's got to get to. He's quick enough. He knows that he's quick enough. Now it's the endurance side of it. Now the secondary side of race car driving kicks in, where you've got to do this consistently for the next hour.
Something I've been noticing is we're looking back at Alan Dobbs from the bumper of Mark Gonzalez. A lot of these drivers, they kind of utilize those runoff areas, and I'm seeing a lot of dirt, a lot of grass being kicked up as Dobbs going to shove it in there into turn 1. Gonzalez slams the door, but I also noticed a bunch of, I don't know if it's gravel or what, over on the exit of turn 6 heading for turn 7, laying on the racing surface. Is that visual, or is that something that you actually can experience if you send your tires through that stuff?
Yeah, you do experience the gravel. If you actually get into the sim of some of these guys, you'll literally hear it bouncing off the mudguards, much in the same way, very similar to the marbles as well that you can see and you can experience. Just a quick note, I've seen Jeffrey Kleinsma go around on the current lap, but I've also seen another car, I think it was Noah Rice? Might have been Taylor Rice, sorry. Also hit the barrier down at turn 6, and he hit it quite hard, so there's a couple guys that have just made mistakes.
Right there you see the right front damage on that 6 machine. Tyler Rice actually made his debut on the season at the other road course, the Chicago Street Course. Didn't get very far in that race, struggled right out of the gate and was one of the early retirees in that one, and not finding quite as much success here at Watkins Glen either. Currently mired back in that 13th position. You mentioned about Jeffrey Kleinsma. There he is, currently in the 12th position, and remember when we checked in on him before, he was up inside of the top 5 battling Ryan Catalano, so huge loss of track position and positions on the running order for driver number 15. One thing that you talked about is we got the battle side by side for the lead heading through the bus stop. Well, maybe not side by side, but Dobbs certainly showed the nose, and Gonzalez is going to overdrive the exit through the grass there. Well, I'll go to a different point that I was going to mention a little later on in this race, but I guess we should talk about it now. Course cutting. What are the parameters of that? Because obviously the 8 overdrove it on the entry, had to basically run it through the grass, completely missed that one rumble strip for the exit of the chicane. He gave up track position in doing so, but is there a future penalty coming towards the 8?
No, so he's okay with that one. And then the big key, generally, in terms of road course racing, if you cut a track like that, you run off, and this is moving away from NASCAR, nothing related to NASCAR. If you make a gain, you give that gain back up, you're good to go. And he's definitely done that because he's actually lost out there. So for Mark, he was too worried about what was going on in that rearview mirror, missed his braking marker, and that's exactly what Alan was looking to try and do. But he's okay with that one. He would have got a slowdown penalty, and he's cleared that one off, so he's good to go. But the big thing tonight is that 20 incident points, so 20 uses of the extra track activities, whereby iRacing would accrue you an incident point, gets you a drive-through penalty. We could see that be a part here tonight.
Keeping an eye on Kyle Holden, but watching him slowly creep his way up through the running order. You see on the left side of your screen with our scoring pylon, he's now up to 5th, albeit 12 seconds behind the new race leader, Alan Dobbs. And while Alan wasn't necessarily at the forefront of our screens back at the Chicago Street Course, he did net a podium finish in 3rd. So, you know, at a racetrack now, maybe a little bit more of a comfort level at Watkins Glen. We saw him putting the pressure on Mark Gonzalez, was able to get by him through the bus stop, and now, with clean air, we'll see if he can set sail and open up some distance between himself and the pole sitter. What are we looking at in terms of the fuel window? Because something that I did notice here is that at least on the start of this race, they began with 65% fuel capacity. So obviously, I would think that would shrink the fuel window a little bit. What do you think projected we're looking at least for this first pit stop? Because sound like you said we're running right through this first stage without coming to pit road.
100%. So I believe we'll get close to the second stage. I believe you'll have to pit sometimes between the end of stage 1 and stage 2. So the margin on that's about 23 laps. But it's more like 22 and a half laps, and then you take half a lap out for your formation lap. So 22 laps is going to be a maximum race distance on the fuel tank you can get out that first run. You save a little bit of fuel, you can get 23 on the second run, but definitely on the first run, it's going to be 22. So get yourself in, lock yourself in. That certainly gets you through the end of the first stage, and I believe that gets you through the end of the... I believe the stage might be 15 tonight, so 15 and 30 will be the two markers that they'll be looking for.
Jonathan
Gonzalez is actually starting in terms of lap time too. He just ran the fastest lap of the race, so that battle up front's not done yet. I think Gonzalez is just looking after his tires, breathing on them and letting them come in.
I think he gained a lot of that time, especially out of the carousel. He ran very wide in the runoff there, down the straightaway towards turn 6. Might have been where he gained a lot of time, but to your point, he is right now the driver with the fastest lap time at a 1:11.834. That is right now about 0.2 quicker than the next fastest lap, which currently would be held by Kyle Holden at almost a 1:12.8 flat. So
I believe actually Alan Dobbs actually ran a 1:11.9 recently as well, but he's sort of lurking around the 12 flats. So that battle for the lead is going to come back together. You can actually see it. They've closed back up again visibly on screen. So it's going to be important for those guys just to keep track of each other, keep an idea of where they're at. Yeah, I think this is going to see and soar because this will be mistake-oriented. These guys are driving about a 1/10 and a half, 2/10 under what they could drive in terms of maximum pace. So they are not going at it the whole time, which means they're preserving those rear tires. It's going to be about tire temperatures and looking after the rear tires tonight.
One thing that I just observed with these two drivers as well is both started up front. And while we talk about pit road, you know, all the different things that don't necessarily come into play with not a whole lot of tire fall off. There's not going to be a whole lot of an advantage gained if you short pit or undercut the driver that you're battling. But one thing that we do have to bear in mind is this is not an easy pit road, especially for drivers that qualify up at the front of the field. Why? Because that downhill to turn 1 is also part of the second half, the front half, if you will, of pit lane. And a lot of drivers get caught out in two ways. One, they could overstep the speed limit just the least little bit with the downgrade of pit road. But number two, could end up missing their braking zone and overshoot their pit stall just the least little bit. So with both these drivers being on that downhill section of pit road, that's something they got to have in the back of their minds too when they eventually make a pit stop if it's under green.
Remember a couple weeks back we talked about it at Pocono. It did decide the race at Pocono, did help decide what was going to happen all the way back there. So it is relevant to the race. It's not as relevant as some people necessarily think it is. And you can certainly underdrive it fractionally and get away with it without losing anything. Oh!
That's Dylan McDonald going around there in turn 1.
He's on cold tires. He's just come out of the pits after repairs. So he's done for the day, I think.
Man, coming off that great run, podium finish for the first time this season back at Pocono, was looking to ride that momentum, and to your point, looks like he is done for the night. Gonna finish this race unofficially 18th unless Matt Davies can get out there and log about 5 or 6 laps. That would put McDonald 19th of the drivers that took the green flag here this evening. As Kyle Holden continues to march forward, he's now up to the 4th position. And while he's gaining spots on the racetrack, he's losing time to the leaders. The last time we checked in on him, he was 12 seconds back. He is now nearing 15 and a half seconds back. With that loss of track position right out of the gate, is there any type of pit strategy that Kyle Holden can utilize to close up that gap, or is he just relying right now on lap times on the racing surface?
That's it. All he can do is lap times. And get a little bit lucky with traffic is about all he can really hope for. That margin's too much to overcome. You can probably overcome about half of it, but you can't overcome all of that.
Battle on here for the lead, and why is it getting hot and heavy? Because you notice we are on lap 15 of 60. When they come around here to complete the 15th lap, stage points and a playoff point are gonna be paid out. Gonzalez wanting that playoff point, but just couldn't stay to the back bumper of Dobbs out of the bus stop. He may be able to have one final shot at him here through 6 and 7, but you don't want to throw your entire race away just over a stage victory. As Dobbs coming out of turn 7, he'll see the proverbial green and white checkered flag. Stage 1 going to go to driver 35, another bonus point he can kind of put into his piggy bank here for when the postseason begins.
He started off the season a little bit slow, didn't he? He certainly had the speed, he had the capability, but he's starting to put it together in the middle of this season, whereas Kyle Holden started off with a bang, didn't he? So it's coming, it's seeing and soaring just a little bit. It's coming back to him.
Yeah, kind of a flip reverse where, you know, in the case of Dobbs versus Holden, first half of this regular season so far, it was Holden who was closing out the races. Dobbs running into trouble. Now it's the exact opposite, where Dobbs has been able to close out the races. They both have speed every single week, no matter what track we're at. Just kind of depends on which way the luck seems to swing.
One of the big things I'll note about Dobbs and the difference between Kyle Holden and Dobbs in the field is consistency, right? They've been a lot more consistent than everyone else. And they've been at the pointy end, at the important time periods, consistently. Kyle's gone away a little bit. Kyle's actually been sick a little bit over the last couple of weeks, so, you know, he's not at his utmost at the moment, but he is certainly right there and just making sure that he keeps logging away those finishes, and that's the important part, is keep picking away. Even though he's not having great days, the difference between an average day and a great day, that will be the decider when we come to end of season points hauls.
Christopher Reese got the season started off with a bang, got the checker flag at Daytona, 22nd in points coming into this one. And he had a near moment in turn 1. He was battling with Matt Mettler for the 11th position, almost got into Mettler, got hard on the brakes, and as he was trying to get his car going again, had a number of drivers fly by him, and he has since dropped back into the 16th position. I meant to, and I forgot to get the information on if there was a cut line for the race winners of how high they needed to be in the point standings, or if there was maybe just a start requirement. Reese has made 7 of the previous 10 races, so he's definitely made, you know, more than 2/3 of the season so far. And of course, in the event here tonight, I don't know just exactly what the playoff eligibility requirements are, but in terms of the starts, you would have to think Reese would fit under that criteria. Also, to your point as well, going back to the Kyle Holden thing too, we do have to bear in mind that Dobbs has made 1 more start than Kyle Holden. That's why the points are in some way as close as they are. You mentioned about Holden being under the weather. He was not in the Iowa race, so that allowed Dobbs to close up a huge chunk of points, and of course the 2 victories back-to-back helped in that regard also.
I think he was really frustrated about that too, because he was well enough to race the very next night. I was commentating another league, so I think he was actually quite disappointed in that, but made the right decision for himself and his health, which is quite critical. So therein lies the difficulty, right? How hard do you press for these sorts of things? And this is something I'm going through at the moment as a driver as well as psychologically. Is speed-wise, you can be one of the quickest out there. You certainly can. But a lot of drivers struggle, at least early on, to translate car speed to finishes. And that is a big, big key. That's what we term racecraft. The series of principles that allow you to translate speed into finishes. And that's a big, big part of being a successful car driver. You may have speed, and there'll be other days where you don't have any speed. How you translate, we've all seen a driver have an average day, and all of a sudden he pops up and finishes inside the top 5. That's really, really important. If you want to win championships, that is how you win championships. You go to tracks that you're weak at, and you finish inside the top 5, you'll win a championship. You're capable of winning a championship. Right now, I've got a lot of car speed, and this is the frustrating part for me, Seth. Sorry, Trey Whitehead just said dive me on the run into the chicane.
Driver communication at road course is very key as well. You talk about a driver that, you know, may not necessarily have top 5 speed every single week, but definitely runs up inside of the top 10, keeps the car clean, and then we see him finish up in the latter half of the top 5 or just outside of such spot. Patrick McQuaid right now holding down the 8th position, and the consistency out of this 77, 9 top 10s in the previous 10 races, is why he is sitting 5th in the overall point standings.
I think one of the big things is that his speed has improved a little bit, but his consistency has improved massively, and that is the difference between a good driver and a great driver, is that ability to be consistent. Once you find yourself improving as a driver, the difference between yourself and the best is finishing where you should each and every time. You know, you're definitely going to have races where it goes away from you, and you know, that's the big things. I'm sorry, I like as a commentary tactic, I like referencing my own experiences in those bits and pieces, but I think it's really, really crucial. Been through a really rough trot the last 12 months in terms of my life, and I'm now at a point whereby I can say, hey, I'm comfortable with that. I'm comfortable with dealing with the failure in bits and pieces. The one thing I'm not comfortable with is dealing with the failure on the racetrack yet, but I'm getting better at it. And the big thing is, when you can see that you're capable of more and you're not locking it in, that causes frustration. That causes you occasionally not to like being on the sim, because you can just see that you're capable of so much more and you're not really capable of showing. Here comes the pit stops.
Dobbs hitting pit road here, coming to the completion of lap 20. That will turn the race lead back over to Mark Gonzalez. We'll see if anybody else comes to pit road here. So obviously the lower fuel capacity at the start of this race playing into this, but does this mean maybe that the 35 is planning on splitting this race into thirds, maybe 20, 40, when he would make the 2 pit stops?
Yeah, 100%. And I think the big thing about that is, what's the distance that you can make it home from? The distance you can make it home from is lap 38. So if I'm in either of Dobbs or Gonzalez's shoes and I'm coming up to 38 and I'm about to catch traffic, I'm going to pit to get away from that, because traffic's the big decider. I'd rather pit, get away from the traffic, and fight through that, because you'll lose actually a lot more time driving through and overtaking lap traffic. As nice as they are, that's just part and parcel of sharing the racetrack. You know, there's nothing you can do to counteract that. So that'll be the strategy if I was in that position.
That's a great point about traffic, because he was actually closing in on Christopher Reese, who was on the tail end of the lead lap. More drivers on pit road here. Just saw Peyton Holland further back there, Patrick McQuaid, Ryan Catalano, all on pit road, same lap as Alan Dobbs. And here comes Mark Gonzalez now from the lead to make his first pit stop of the evening.
He can't go any longer because he doesn't want to open that margin up. He doesn't want to give Dobbs the ability to run away. I think the biggest thing that he can do right now is just shadow him, watch him, connect those dots. So
Kyle Holden's going to take the race lead. So if anything,
Very
he'll have
important for
himself a bonus point for a lap led. He's got fairly clean racetrack in front of him as well, so kind of a important in-lap and out-lap if indeed he's going to be coming to pit road this time to try and continue to close up the gap between himself, Dobbs, and Gonzalez.
Yes, this will be about accuracy for him. A bunch of guys just jumped on the radio and said that they're going to pit in here as well. So making sure, again, you connect the dots, do everything right, turn the tires off. You don't want to take tires in these sorts of situations either. So, but again, it's just what can you do to minimize the mistakes? We touched on it a whole bunch, but one of the critical things actually that you can help. Why do we use procedures in each and every one of our individual everyday lives? As Holden is going to dive another lane. But the reason that we use policies and procedures is it gives us an automatic checkpoint for our brains to work to, which helps keep us to task and helps us continue focusing, gives us checkboxes. We can gives us points to validate, and our brains also work really, really well on common sets of instructions. So one of the big things that you can do as a driver, and this comes in cautions, I use this tactic quite a lot in cautions, and I was actually talking to Patrick McQuaid about this earlier on in the season. He was looking for a little bit of advice, little bits and pieces that you can do away from the race car other than just talent, other than just putting in bits and pieces in. We talked about other stuff as well, about talent, but making sure that you putting the effort in. Is that Alan Dobbs with a penalty on speeding on pit lane? He's lost spots?
I don't think so. He's just cycled back to the lead.
No, Gonzalez did.
Oh, wow.
I believe Gonzalez has actually lost time with a slow stop. Unless my eyes are deceiving me.
Well, no.
They might be.
Well, I don't know exactly where he would have lost the time, but to your point, he's going to cycle out into third, almost 10 seconds behind the leaders. I'm looking right now, only a 1/10 of a second difference of the amount of total time on pit lane, and 4/10 of a second slower pit stop for Alan Dobbs. So I'm not exactly sure where Gonzalez lost that time. But it's now got him back in the third position.
Check the times on the in and out laps. That'll be the big key. It might be. Remember we were talking about that traffic? That might have been it.
That could have very well been it. And now Kyle Holden finds himself in the second position. He has cut the interval between him and the race lead in half. It was about 12 seconds before the pit stops. It is down now to 6. And the lap times are pretty similar between these two. I mean, even go just their best lap time, 0.004 of a second difference between the fastest laps laid down by Kyle Holden and Alan Dobbs. You don't normally talk about thousandths of a second at a road course.
No, but that's just how tight it is. That means we've got a consistent driver base up at that end of the field. That's very, very healthy. But yeah, consistency, that's where we're going with that point. Talking to Patrick McQuaid, particularly surrounding cautions, your policies and procedures. Any race teams that I tend to run in, I've instituted this because I know I've proven that it works. And it really, really helps to keep everyone focused about what the plan is, what we're thinking about. And it also encourages drivers to think about strategy as well and use some decision-making for strategy. That way, if they're ever off and racing on their own, racing somewhere else, they've already got a lot of the mind work. So one of the things that we do, caution comes out. First and foremost, make sure you catch the pace car. Make sure you figure out where the wreck is, catch the pace car, do it safely, but do it as quickly as you possibly can. Always a big, big thing is catching the pace car. Number 2 is then we'll have a little bit of a talk about strategy. We'll spend the next lap talking about strategy. And that's critical because everyone needs to be on the same page and set that strategy out. That means jumping across to your fuel in car. That means jumping across to the tires, making sure your tires are all set up. That way, when you roll around a pit lane, you can just focus on nailing that pit lane speed. Number 3 is after we come off of pit lane. Of course, you know, it's on the way into pit lane, it's probably something like make sure you stop in your box, look for your box. If there's any rules, so some series will say you must stay to the left-hand side of pit lane. So little bits and pieces you can work on. Is that Gonzalez back in the lane?
That is indeed Gonzalez coming back down pit road.
He can't make it. Something's gone wrong for him.
Reason unknown for the pit stop here for the pole sitter. Doesn't look like they're changing tires at all. I don't know if this is I don't know if he's serving a penalty or what the case is, but it's now dropped him out of the top 5, actually now out of the top 10, and we'll try and see if we can figure out what exactly went wrong with it. Is this a situation of getting that 20x that you were talking about as far as the incident points?
That's a drive-through penalty. That's different. So it wouldn't be stopping if that was the case.
Well, he is still on pit road, now down to the 14th position, and he has fallen off of the lead lap. Tough break there for our pole sitter, who was looking like he could be up here in the conversation for the victory. Was putting a lot of pressure on Alan Dobbs before we got to the cycle of green flag pit stops. And I remember last road course we were at, that Chicago street course, I asked you, was aerodynamics really a key part of road course racing? You gave a resounding yes. When we cut back and watched Dobbs take the lead, he closed up on the back bumper of Dalton McKenney in the heavy braking zone of turn 1, and he ran into the back of him. You can see the visible damage there just above the right front tire. How bad is that going to affect Dobbs here for the remainder of this race as he's trying to maintain the gap between himself and Kyle Holden?
Well, he's just run the fastest lap of the race, so the answer to that question is very little. But the track temperature's actually climbed a fair bit, so that says that he had pace to burn in that first stint. He was just managing it. which is quite critical. That's really, really important from a driving perspective. Sometimes you don't want to use all the pace that's actually available to you because it is a bigger risk. Yeah, look, I mean, it's certainly going to be, particularly his straight line speed, that'll be the big differential. Is that if he's not quite able to hang on to it in terms of straight line speed, he'll certainly be a touch slower, but it's not massive, you know, so... You know, there is a little bit of leeway and room for him to work there. It's not costing him too much. Watkins Glen isn't a high speed circuit either, so...
I was still a little skeptical on what was going on with Mark Gonzalez, but we do have confirmation that a couple of drivers actually lost a great deal of time on pit road due to speeding penalties. One of them was Trey Whitehead. He was 4th when the pit stop cycle began. He now finds himself back in 6th. Another one was Ryan Catalano. He was up hovering around between 5th through 7th for a majority of that first run. He now finds himself off the lead lap, mired back in the 14th position. So you said it, Scott, pit road can play just as much of a factor, much like it did at Pocono a couple of weeks ago, here at Watkins Glen, into not only the eventual race winner, but in who's going to have a good day and who's not going to have a good day.
Yeah, it's a big, big part about the racetrack. Getting it right. So, and the pit lane entry comes up on you very, very quickly. It's very tight off the exit of turn for the last corner of the racetrack. So you got to be careful. Make sure you hit your speed. There's literally no reason to speed for a couple of these guys now with the margins. So they'll actually underdrive the pit lane the whole way through just to try and preserve. It's risk versus reward. What's the risk? Well, the risk is that you get yourself a stop and hold penalty. The reward, there's very little reward. So the biggest thing that you can possibly do is sacrifice a 10th through pit lane to make sure you don't lose 40 seconds.
Alan Dobbs setting a blistering pace right now. Has about 7 seconds back to Kyle Holden, as well as a quartet of lap machines. You just saw him moments ago get around Jeffrey Kleinsma. You've also got Christian Roos, Matt Mettler, Chris Roberge between the race leader and second place. That would be 8th through 11th right now that have been put a lap down. Only 7 drivers remain on the lead lap, and right now I would say, well, give it about maybe another 8 to 10 laps. We may end up having only the top 5 on the lead lap, as Trey Whitehead and Peyton Holland, a couple of Toyotas, they're currently running roughly about 20 seconds ahead of race leader Alan Dobbs.
Because I think Gonzalez is back out, but now he's 1 lap down, so he's gone to 15th. So he is still out there in turning times. So we'll have to keep an eye on how that progresses, because I don't think he's done for the day, but it's really confusing what's actually happened to him. He spent 1 minute and 20 seconds on pit lane, speeding. I'd say he sped on the way out of pit lane.
I think
he had to come back down to pit lane for a speeding penalty.
I think you're right, because looking at the amount of time he spent in his pit stall would have equated to what drivers Trey Whitehead and Ryan Catalano had to sit in their pit stall for with their speeding penalties. So, yeah, I mean,
the
it's
difference
tough,
is
right?
They sped on the way in.
Exactly. That's what I was just going to say, right? If you're going to get, I know you don't want to get a black flag penalty, but maybe better to get it speeding on pit road rather than off of pit road, because we saw, obviously, the price that Mark Gonzalez had to pay.
Yeah, the problem is, for those of you watching at home, if you speed before you hit your stall, you got 40 seconds out of your pit stop. If you speed after your stall, you got to come back into the pit lane to serve another penalty. You can't back up through the pit lane to serve a penalty. So he's had to circulate effect. The reason he's lost all that time is he's had to circulate back through. So
give a shout out here to Peyton Holland in that M&M's Toyota Camry. See just ahead, that is a potential battle for the 6th position. Trey Whitehead in the 23, but Peyton coming into this race so far has only scored 2 finishes inside of the top 10. 10th place finishes at the season opener at Daytona, and then a few weeks ago at Iowa. Right now en route for his best finish of the season, a driver that comes into this race 18th in overall points. And we talked about the fact there's a lot of big names that are not in the field here tonight that he could bypassing the standings. One driver that's just ahead of him in the standings, Chris Hubka, not in the field here tonight. Brandon Cooper could be within striking distance as well, so could maybe point his way up into the top 15 in preparation for next week. And I love how you were going down that checklist, talking about that. And I'm going to give you a little homework. I want a checklist for next week, because we're going to the world's fastest half mile, the last great Coliseum, Bristol Motor Speedway. We've already seen some short track racing here this season, Iowa, Richmond, but now we get to see what happens when you throw a blanket over about 15, 20 cars, bumper to bumper, door to door. Next week is going to be wild.
Yeah, it will be. The checklist is going to start with take it easy, get through stage one. The big thing that I'm trying to do early at Bristol is check stage one off. That is I cannot tell you how important it is to just make sure you go in with a mindset of, I've got to survive stage one. And the reason for that is it colors your decision making. If you're thinking survive, and that's all you're thinking about for the opening sector of the race, what happens is you're not going to race anyone anywhere near as hard. You're gonna be thinking, okay, maybe it's best that I let this guy go. What does that do to your race car? Well, it means that you've got a race car to work with. It means that you'll give a lot more. The other thing is drivers may look at that and go, okay, well, I might have to give him something back at the end of the race. So it actually does set you up for a little bit of payback later on, even if it's later on in the season. But yeah, first and foremost is survive. Think about the long run. Think about the strategy. The other thing is know your critical windows. At Bristol, those are so much more important than any other racetrack. Because if you have a pit window coming up and you don't take that window, you are going to be punished way down the line. It may be very, very late in the race, but you will get punished at some point in time.
We are now more than halfway through tonight's race at Watkins Glen. We were remiss in announcing Alan Dobbs as the winner of Stage 2, so that marked his 5th and 6th stage victories on the season. That now puts him to the top of the leaderboard in that category as well. Holden had the series-leading 5 stage victories coming into tonight. So Alan Dobbs will now take the advantage as far as playoff points are concerned, compiled through stage victories, and currently holds 7 seconds, well, about 6.6 seconds, back to the 59 of Kyle Holden, as we're going to take you through the field, take a look at some of the adventures of the drivers here today. See, Alan Dobbs, lowest he's run is 7th. The only reason for that, he was on pit road and other drivers stayed out an extra lap, but he has had the car to beat here today ever since he got around the pole sitter Mark Gonzalez. Nobody's been able to really stay with the 35 car. He's executed on pit road and now just has to drive a clean second half of this race.
Very, very critical. Thinking about championship P2 at the moment, Kyle Holden, guy that missed qualifying. He started at the back. He had to drive his way through the field. He's done that very, very successfully. Gets a little bit lucky. We talked about it pre-show. He's going to need some luck to finish on the podium. Well, he got that luck. He sits P2.
Noah Jackson comes into this race 3rd in the point standings. He's 3rd on the racetrack. Still looking for his first trip to victory lane. The only driver in the top 4 in overall standings that is yet to have a checkered flag. 59 points out of the points lead. Right now, he wouldn't be in line to gain on either Holden or Dobbs, who are in the positions ahead of him, but at least keep them within striking distance, looking for his 4th top 5 on the season.
Great opportunity for him as well. Driver of the 27 at the moment as well. I actually have a look at the battle. There's a car starting to creep up on him in the background as well. I cannot tell you how that important that is. So that's Jonathan Cogswell. Cogswell's been quick at different points throughout the season. His tendency has been to be very, very quick at the front end of the run, and he's been lucky sometimes throughout the season. We get to the flag. There is only a short run left to go to that flag. He's really showcased an opportunity to utilize the short run speed. His big thing for the second half of the season is going to be seeing if he can convert that pace into being able to look after tires at the same time. If he can do that, he is going to be a shot at the championship. Alternatively, Sometimes you might just get lucky, get a yellow flag late in the race. I think he's an outside shot at the championship. I really do.
One of the things that perplexed me with Cogswell is he's sitting 6th in overall points, but only has 1 top 5 so far this season in the previous 10 races. En route right now to maybe score his 2nd top 5, while on the flip side, this guy is top 5 the field to death, as Patrick McQuaid in the previous 10 races has finished inside the top 10 in 9 of them, and in the top 5 in 6 of those events. He comes into this race 69 points out of the points lead. Not saying that it's absolutely going to happen, but let's say that there's a stretch where Dobbs, Holden, Jackson all run into trouble. If the consistency keeps up for the Mufflerland Chevrolet, we could be talking about him through consistency alone battling for this regular season championship when we get towards the end of the regular season.
That is a big, big run. I'm so glad for him. The only downside I got to say about Patrick McQuaid is he cursed me before the race tonight. He said, Scott, you've had a lot of bad runs lately. You're on for a good one here tonight. Yeah, I blame you, Pat. I'm looking at you in the 77. So yeah, that's on him. We're now going to step back to Trey Whitehead. Again, another driver that if he gets lucky, he's had flashes of speed. His flashes have been a little bit less consistent, but him and Noah Jackson, I think you can swap them. I think at each and every week, you can basically take either one of those drivers and you can swap them around. He's just been a little bit unlucky. His finishes haven't been quite as shiny, quite as polished, but he is moments away from winning a race at any opportunity. We were actually having a big discussion in the league and hanging out with a bunch of drivers last week. There is about 7 or 8 drivers that can win any race, and Trey Whitehead is one of them.
Yeah, Trey Whitehead was a driver that really, you could see the potential of him hitting a consistent streak, and to your point, winning on any given week. The speed was definitely there, but the first 3-4 races, the luck factor was just not on his side. Was mired around 15th through 20th in points. He's been putting the races together here the last month or so, finds himself 10th in the overall standings, as right behind him, little loose there off of turn 7, getting those right sides on the rumble strip specifically, well actually those left sides I should say, specifically the left front or the left rear. I'll get these tires directions correct eventually, but Peyton Holland holding down that 7th position. And we talked about Kyle Holden starting out back in the 14th position. Granted, there were a couple of drivers on the grid ahead that didn't start this race, but Holland was scheduled to roll off 20th place, and he's picked up 13 spots since the drop of the green flag 37 laps ago. Now up inside of the top 10. Car looks clean as a whistle. He's put together a really good race.
Yeah, I can't say enough about that. And from what I know of Peyton Holland as well, he's newer to the oval side of things, so this should be a little bit more in his wheelhouse. But he is the biggest thing is when that's the case, you don't come out here going, I'd love to go to finish each and every week. Your goal is, I'd love to just put together a strong run and see what I can learn. Talking about 8th spot, I think at the moment, it's Jeffrey Kleinsma. Again, another driver that's Jeff's got a little bit of a problem at the moment of being a little bit inconsistent. Well, that's perfectly just a touch deep as he runs into the bus stop. But Jeff, I think, is another one of those drivers where when he runs his own race and he doesn't get in over his head, he again runs smooth, he runs consistent. That's what he's done here tonight. A little bit of mistakes, that happens, particularly for a driver that's a little bit, a little bit edgy in terms of his road course performances. But the big thing for Jeff is that he's just got to start locking in and making sure that he gets those finishes week in, week out, and he'll do fine.
Jeffrey Kleinsma coming into this race 11th in the point standings, 2 top 10s so far this season, still looking for his first top 5, and there might be a trio of drivers that might move their way up a couple of spots, maybe a spot or 2 into the top 10 in points, with Sean Lauder not in the field here tonight. Christian Ruse, Trey Whitehead, and Jeffrey Kleinsma. Speaking of Ruse, he is just behind Kleinsma here in what could be a battle for first car 1 lap down. 8th position under contest. Christian Ruse, there was a point of the season about 3-4 weeks ago, we were talking about him consistently finishing up inside of the top 10. Now he's hit a little bit of a patch here, a little bit of a cold spell, but 9th in overall points coming into this one, and looking maybe for the Glen to rekindle that spark. Not necessarily the greatest at road courses. He survived back at the Chicago street course, which netted him some really good points, and he's hung in here inside of the top 10 at Watkins Glen. And as we said, might be able to get up there to Kleinsma to snipe away that 8th position.
Yeah, those 2 guys are probably going to have a really, really good battle at the end of the race. One of the best parts about that, though, is that that's actually good for their race. Sometimes it's actually quite easy to get stuck chasing the rabbit, and it sort of locks you in. Chris Roberge is another driver who's been here, been there, been a little bit everywhere. He sits out a 10th spot at the moment. It's a good start for him. I think he came in, another driver that's looking to sort of come into tonight and just go, I just want to finish. I just want to put this race in the rear view. I'm going to circulate. I'm going to put laps together. I think he's done that. A top 10 finish when you come to a road course as well. Look at the drivers that are behind him at the moment that have had troubles on pit lane. So again, thinking long term. And I think the big thing for him next week is I think Bristol's going to be a really, really important race to the back end of his season. And the reason for that is that Chris has a tendency, again, similar to Jeff Kleinsma, of sometimes getting himself involved in other people's issues. Next week's a big one. If he can walk away from Bristol with a great finish and he runs a smooth, consistent race, awesome. That's exactly what I want to see from both him and Kleinsma next week. I think he's got the potential to do it. So I'm hoping that he can lock in and keep himself free of drama next week.
Right now, Roberge, if he can hang on to that 10th position, it'd be his second top 10 here in the 2025 season of the Grind Cup Series, but he may have some company, as just moments ago, Mark Gonzalez, who's back on the charge after the speeding penalty, got by Matt Mettler to move up into the 11th spot, and he's only 6 seconds behind that 9 machine for the final spot inside of the top 10. Peyton Holland has gone a lap down now to Alan Dobbs, so now leaves us with 6 drivers on the lead lap, and we started that through the field with about 6.6 seconds separating Dobbs back to Holden. As we check back in, it has now been cut down by a full second, maybe a little more than that, 5.5 seconds from the 35 back to the 59. Closing in on 20 to go. So right now, we probably ran about 7-8 laps as we did that through the field, and only a second was cut down here by Holden. He gained a ton of track position, a ton of time on pit road, and we know that we're going to see these drivers on pit lane at least one more time before the conclusion. Is 20 laps enough time with the pace that Holden's been able to set here during the course of this run?
Yes, it is, but I don't think this is a pace race. I think what you're seeing from Alan is he's just going out there and he's logging smooth, consistent laps. He's making sure, he's basically saying, Kyle, look, if you want it, you got to come out here and get it. He's certainly capable of running pace that's good enough to get out there, get after it, get that spot and disappear down the road. So, look, it's always an opportunity. The difficult part is going to be, can he do that consistently? Does traffic work on his side? Because if Kyle gets a little bit lucky in terms of traffic, here we go. That second pit stop's now in action.
That's Jeffrey Kleinsma. We jumped back to him as he was slow. He may have just been slowing out of 6 in preparation for the access road into the entry of turn 7 as he makes his way down pit lane now. Matt Mettler just came down pit road for his final stop of the evening, and we will wait to see if Dobbs will be hitting pit road. Remember, we saw him come to pit road at the conclusion of lap 20. We're about 20 laps into this run here, so we may see the 35 make the dive onto pit lane, especially with the fact he would have had traffic in front of him here in the form of Trey Whitehead. And right on cue, here comes the 35.
Again, I think it was traffic. I think it's exactly what he was thinking. So that's all about avoiding traffic and keeping himself nice and smooth and consistent.
Kyle Holden will take the race lead. Still has to make a pit stop himself. Very loose there. Out of turn 1 as he'll make his way
worthwhile
around
noting as well,
Kleinsma.
If these guys don't actually make tire stops, like if this is a fuel-only stop at the back end of this race, well, Dobbs has gone a fair bit earlier. Dobbs only ran 20 laps in that first run, so his first stop would have been shorter, so he would have made a little bit of time there. It's probably a second and a half that he'll make up, so it's not a huge amount, but it will be some. But yeah, Kyle Holden ran 22 laps on that first run. If he runs 22 laps again here, that's only 16 laps of gas he needs to get home.
Didn't follow the 35 down pit road, so not sure if he took tires or not. Pit stop time was 14.6 seconds, which I believe
that would be tires.
That would be tires, okay. I think it was about maybe a tenth slower than his first pit stop, so right around the same consistent mark, around 14.5 seconds. Holden going to stay out that extra lap. He talked about him. He went 22 laps on that first run, so might be looking for the same target number here, more than likely be on pit lane next time around. Or could this just be a case of not really a whole lot of traffic out the windshield, so take advantage of the clean racetrack here for an extra lap?
Both. It'll be a combination of both. Certainly, running long, giving himself that little bit of fuel offset. That's certainly quite critical at this point in time. So, yeah, he'll definitely be utilizing everything that he possibly can. And it's just they're only little bits and pieces that he's actually leveraging. But if he's going to get back to Alan and actually challenge him, then he needs to utilize everything that he's got at his disposal. And
little idea here on Alan Dobbs and what he's been able to do with the lap time set here in this race. When we had the first cycle of pit stops, he came to pit road, came off pit road, he was in 7th. This time he came to pit road, came off pit lane, he's in 2nd place. He was able to get his pit stop done and dusted, leave pit road, and still be ahead of the 3rd place running Noah Jackson, who still has to come to pit road himself.
yeah, Noah's doing the same strategy, just running long, logging laps. So for both of those guys, that's what they're thinking about.
More drivers on pit road. Patrick McQuaid, Peyton Holland, both looking to close out this race with top 10s. They've been running up in the top 7 pretty much the entirety of this race. Chris Reese pitted about 7 laps ago for his final pit stop. Waiting on about another 8-9 drivers to make their final pit stops of the evening here, including 4 of the current top 5.
Patience, patience. This race just enters another little bit of a holding period as we're just waiting to see where all the cards fall. So the big thing is make sure that you get on a pit lane nice and smooth. Think about your braking marker. I think this should be the lap where Kyle will probably go to the lane, so.
Good call.
Yeah, there it is.
There he is.
Pitting in.
Trey Whitehead just ahead of him. Trey gonna make sure he keeps that car down at 40 miles per hour. Got hit with a speeding penalty on the first cycle of pit stops. Holden's going to have a pit stall further back here after he ended up not setting an official qualifying lap. So then they jack up the left side. They will go around making a 4-tire pit stop as Alan Dobbs right there going to take the race lead back. Holden just now leaving pit lane. It was 5.5 seconds, the gap when Dobbs hit pit road. We'll have to see now what the gap will be between Dobbs and Holden once both get up to speed.
Jeff Kleinsman just smashed the wall in the bus stop. He was on cold tires. I believe he just made his pit stop, so I believe that was a cold tire issue. His car is destroyed.
Smoke billowing from behind the TaylorMade Chevrolet as he will try and limp that thing back to pit road. Just a couple corners before he can get out of harm's way, but tough break there for Jeffrey Kleinsma. We saw him start this race up in the top 10, ran into a solo spin issue in the early going, drifted back to 12th, had fought his way back up to 7th, and now that car is not more than likely going to reach the conclusion of this one. Tough break there for Kleinsma, who was en route to a solid top 10 finish before that moment in the bus stop. You can also update Dalton McKenney, retired out of the race. He had an issue a couple laps just before the green flag pit stop cycle. He'll finish 16th, and Tyler Rice, it'll be the second road course race that he will not reach the conclusion of. And so we saw he had right front damage back during stage 1, and apparently the night did not get any better for him. He's out of the race in 17th place. Right now we've got 15 drivers still running currently, 6 of them on the lead lap. Trey Whitehead, the last of those drivers, but he's only about 4 seconds ahead of the race leader Alan Dobbs. And update on the interval, it grew by 3 seconds, 8.5 seconds now from Dobbs back to Holden. 15 laps left. Has time run out for Holden to have a shot at this victory?
Yeah, so that's probably that one done and dusted. He's going to need a mistake and a lot of traffic, which, I mean, there is some traffic banked up around the racetrack. but it's going to require a lot of luck now for Carl to be relevant.
We were awaiting 2 drivers, now make it 1 to complete this pit stop cycle. Chris Roberge was one of the drivers that ran long there. He's just now hit pit road. We're also awaiting the 8 of Mark Gonzalez, who's been able to fight his way back up to 5th, but he will lose a couple of positions, give a couple of positions back when he eventually makes the dive onto pit road, which should be in the next lap or 2. It should move Trey Whitehead back up into the top 5. Patrick McQuaid, Peyton Holland will more than likely bypass him as well. Gonzalez will probably fall down somewhere to around the 9th, 10th position once everything cycles.
So he's got some luck in front of him. I'm really, really frustrated. I thought today is the day that Mark can lock that one in, but as it turns out, you'd rather be a lucky race car driver than a good one, huh?
You mentioned about the fact, though, too, even, opportunity to gain a ton of points, but with the fact that only 19 drivers took the green flag here tonight, if you take the green, you're going to be gaining points on a number of drivers. I mean, a half dozen drivers up inside the top 20 in points, not even in this race here tonight. So an opportunity to still gain ground. Maybe not necessarily by large increments, but at least close the gap up some. And we got some interesting tracks coming up here as well in the next couple of weeks. We've already documented about Bristol. You want a wild card race, Talladega Super Speedway on May 7th. We got the throwback race at Darlington, the Lady in Black on May 14th. So, there's a lot of interesting racetracks that are coming up that very easily could shake the point standings up. And, in order to maybe set yourself up for building off of momentum, or maybe relying on a little bit of luck to move you up through the point standings, kind of get yourself a foothold here with at least a solid day. Just finish out this race here at Watkins Glen.
Yeah, so just make sure you tick the boxes to home from here. That's the big key. Track temp swung around again. It's actually cooled off massively. Now we're down to 24 Celsius. I know in the midpoint of the race we're out above 30 degrees Celsius, so we would have been up mid-90s in terms of temperatures. So that's cooled down a massive amount. So the big thing is now get your head down, make sure that you lock in with all these clouds that are swirling about. Make sure you got a good race car underneath you. Make sure that you've got the fuel to get to the end. If you haven't got enough fuel, is it half a lap that you're short? Sweet, you can start saving that now. You'll get your way home. But it's just do all the big picture stuff, big picture racing stuff right now, because this isn't it. There's no real racing going on, and this is one of those days where you just got to make sure, okay, I'm smooth, I'm consistent, I don't need to be quick.
Right now, the closest battle on the racetrack, which I think is not going to be much of a battle at all in the next lap or two. Mark Gonzalez with Peyton Holland a few car lengths behind. Gonzalez just came to pit road. He will have about 5-lap fresher tires here as he is on his out lap. Peyton Holland going to jump the curb there. This would be for 7th place, but just based off of the lap times we saw prior to the green flag pit stop cycle, I believe that Mark Gonzalez is going to pull away from the 19. So right now he's setting his sights on Patrick McQuaid. That'd be about 18 seconds, 19 seconds he'd have to make up. So he's more than likely in the position he'll finish this race unless other drivers up inside the top 5 run into some issues, as Dobbs now going to close up on Trey Whitehead as he nears 10 laps to go. And want to remind everybody that the next time you see us here on FRN will be next Wednesday night when we're at Bristol Motor Speedway here for the Grind Cup Series, the RTG Talladega Challenge Series now in their off-season, a champion crowned in Grant Wesley. It'll be a couple weeks before we're back in action with the 65th season. Have to get used to that new number, the 65th season of the Rolling Thunder Gaming Talladega Challenge Series. So next Wednesday night, next time that you'll see us here as we continue on the 2025 season here for the ESports Oval League.
Good show out, good turnout from the drivers as well. I know these cars are very, very difficult to drive, and a lot of it is actually that tire compound as well. on road courses. The big things. So a softer race car is generally considered easier because the car will roll around. Generally the biggest issue you have with a soft race car is actually getting the car to want to turn into the corner. Stiff race car, it's actually trying to keep the car underneath you is somewhat of a big issue. But the other thing is the tire compound is just very difficult to drive around. So the fact that we've had good turnouts for not only Chicago, which I think is a bigger testament to the series as well, but also then backing it up to the Watkins Glen is big testament to the series. You're seeing a little bit of traffic management communication going on right now. Bunch of guys recognizing they're not fighting guys and just letting them roll.
Yeah, to your point, 25 drivers in that Chicago street course race. 19 drivers took the green flag here tonight, and that's not to say that there were only 19 drivers here. There were a few drivers that actually were out there, logged some laps, and maybe made the decision that I'll be maybe a little bit more of a menace out on the racetrack than anything, and decided not to participate. But to your point, still to have nearly 20 drivers at these road course races, definitely a testament to the series, and a lot of drivers have been able to put together some solid races here. I mean, the schedule is definitely not peppered with road courses. We've got Sonoma that's going to be coming up a little bit later here in the summer. Road America going to be the penultimate race of the regular season, and then the Charlotte Roval in the playoffs. So a trio of road courses still to go. But while we're not necessarily going to, we'll have those 3, 4, 5 drivers that we'll single out as the ones to watch. I think that we can, based off of Chicago and this race here at Watkins Glen as well, there'll be drivers that we'll be able to kind of look at and compile a list of, keep an eye on these guys. They may not necessarily go up there and lead all the laps, but if we were doing like a fantasy pick thing, if you're looking for somebody to give you a solid top 10, I think there's a good half dozen drivers that could fit that bill.
Well, I mean, think of it from a Formula One style team pick instead of a NASCAR team pick. Think of yourself, you've got to pick an A driver and you've got to pick a B driver. Who would you be selecting? There's obviously quite a number of names that would automatically lock themselves into that A driver status. But then you've got to look around and you've got to go, who's your good B driver? I think Trey's a really, really good pick. I think maybe he's actually good enough to be in that number 1 driver. But I think I'll leave that one up to the fans because there's a couple of good guys. I really would put Jonathan Cogswell up. I'd like to pick him as my backup driver. As my secondary, who's going to log points for me, which I think is a really, really big vote to how much he's improved of late. That's a really good opportunity for our fans to sort of get out there and have a little bit of a debate and discussion about and say, who would you be selecting if you had to pick a secondary driver and all the big names were taken? They're all on massive contracts. You're never going to get them. But who would you pick for your second?
I mean,
well, Seth, have a crack.
Honestly, I like the look of Patrick McQuaid. I
agree with that, yep.
I think Dalton McKenney, I mean, I'm just looking now. I mean, he's accumulated, I think, the 7th most stage points so far this season at 53. So, if you're looking at a driver that's going to run consistently up inside of the top 10 the whole race, not necessarily be one that runs top 15 and then gets a top 10 near the close of the race. I think you got to look at the 46. Obviously, not the run he was looking for here tonight, but you can kind of consider this a one-off as he's been really good with the Speedway program. I agree with you in terms of the Jonathan Cogswell shout, and while he's not in the field here tonight as well, I think Sean Lauder could be put into that category as well. We usually see the 12 running consistently up inside the top 10 week after week. So there's so many drivers that I think could definitely fit into that B category, not necessarily drivers that you would look at initially and say, they're going to dominate this race. But given the circumstances, I mean, you talked about Cogswell, one of the best guys on the short run. You give them a scenario, you give them track position near the end of a race, any given type of a scenario, you could be having any of those drivers that you would put maybe in the B category, they could go out there and they could take the checkered flag over the drivers that dominated the race from pillar to post.
Yeah, and it's about smarts, putting yourselves in those positions at all the right times. And giving yourself that opportunity as well. I cannot speak to when you get that opportunity, being able to have a crack. And there's a bunch of drivers, and I'm going to put myself in this category as well, that put themselves in that position. And then they drive over and above their heads. They maybe like emotions get in the way a little bit. I mean, they take a look at the guys around them and they go, oh, well, these guys are really aggressive, so I'm going to step up. That's not how you got there. So, that's a really important one to note as well for a bunch of guys is, okay, well, what happens when I put myself in the big position and I'm inside that top 5 the first time? Log the laps. Be smooth, be consistent, make sure you stay there. If you have to give up a spot, you give up a spot. But make sure you finish 6th, make sure you finish 7th, make sure you finish the race instead of finishing 20th.
Wow, we were following this battle just behind the leader, Alan Dobbs. Trey Whitehead putting the pressure there on Cogswell, and kind of similar to how we saw Mark Gonzalez lose the lead in the early stages of this race. Gonzalez make that Cogswell, maybe with both eyes in the rearview mirror, missed his braking zone into the bus stop, and Trey Whitehead was able to sneak on by. It was one of the keys you talked about beginning of the race. You're not necessarily going to overtake a driver because your car is faster. You're going to overtake a driver if you can force them into a mistake. Case in point right there is Whitehead now moves up to 4th.
Yeah, so that was just a little bit of focusing too much on deer in the headlights style situation. I call that one. Driver a little bit overwhelmed by the circumstances. And again, Cogswell, I think he's exactly that case of driver that we're just talking about. Capable, but overdrives in specific situations. He actually just said on the radio, I was actually going to try and find a hole to let you by. You faster, you were going to take it away from me. So he was preparing to do that. He just didn't need to make the mistake there.
Saw him also on the front straightaway move to driver's right to let Kyle Holden on by. Holden has been able to close up the gap between himself and Dobbs after they both made their final pit stops of the evening, but he's only been able to close it up to just under 6 seconds, and there's less than 5 laps to work with. So now for Kyle Holden, he's just basically trying to hold that second position. It's going to be a decent points day. The problem is the driver that he's chasing for the overall points lead is having a better points day. He swept both the stages. He's netted 20 points here during the regular season with those stage victories. And right now he is en route to a maximum points day, having led the most laps, and right now en route to what would be not only his 4th checkered flag of the season, but his 3rd straight victory in a row. Granted, it would be within the span of 4 weeks rather than 3 since we had the off week, but make that 3 straight races he has started in. He's about to take 3 straight checkered flags.
He's dominated the month of April, hasn't he?
Absolutely.
Some might say April Fool's Day, but it's been dubbed since April. I think more so than anything else.
Do we call him April Allen?
Yeah, I think that's going to have to be the moniker.
We don't have any other months that begin with A, and I don't think we run in December, so we can't call him December Dobbs. So if he keeps running this streak into June and July, we're going to have our work cut out for us trying to come up with a nickname there. But this time by, he'll be at 3 laps to go. And just think of the configuration of tracks that he's been able to win at as well.
Yeah,
you go back,
you
go back 4 weeks ago, short track of Iowa. 2 weeks ago, we were at Pocono, which a lot of drivers say that road course drivers are very comfortable there with the different variations of banking in the corners. But Dobbs was dominant there, and now at the road course of Watkins Glen, less than 3 laps away from capturing his 4th checkered flag on the season.
I mean, he's just been... The big thing from Alan is he's not been aggressive, he's just been smooth, he's been consistent. And one of the things that you got to do, I think we talked about this at some point, is just show your nose to the driver sometimes, and that's how he spooked. He didn't overtake Mark Gonzalez today. He forced Gonzalez into an error. It was Gonzalez that made the error. Was he quick? Was he close enough to make that move? Yeah, certainly. He was absolutely capable of making that move, but the difficulty is so high. Alan would have been aware of that. I'm sure that's one of the things that we would, when we ask him at the end of the race, how did you set that one up? How did you tee that one up? He's like, oh man, I wouldn't have been going for that move. It's just harassing him, just making him sure that Mark knew I was right behind him, because they're teammates, those two, so they would have been talking about it. There was a lot of, I was listening into them pre-race, and Mark was actually the first driver to go out and get into the 11.7s in practice, and immediately from Alan was, great lap, man. That's a great lap. So, there's a lot of enjoyment in the race and the race cars between those two together. So, it's, even though it's a mistake, Mark will appreciate it, because when you're at that level and somebody outfoxes you, all you can do is stand back and appreciate what they're able to achieve.
2 laps to go, and Kyle Holden is in the same camera shot as Alan Dobbs. Last time by, 0.6 of a second quicker, driver 59, albeit 4.5 seconds back. He can see the leader. That's got to be some added motivation, but with about a lap and a half to go, would that be enough time to even get close enough for a shot at Alan Dobbs? And if we want to make Alan Dobbs what he's been able to do sound even more impressive, we could say that he's en route right now, if he's able to indeed capture this checkered flag, his 4th win in the last 5 races, as this whole run was spearheaded back at the beginning of March at the Kansas Speedway.
Again, I think the big testament is, have a look at the style of racetracks that he's done it across, right? It's all different racetracks. The fact that he's got a road course victory, and then there's a, shall I say, this looks a little bit Larson-esque, because it's not just one style of racetrack, it's multiple. He's had to go out there, he's had to wheel man, and he's been in situations where he's been on the back foot in those races. I think Kansas, actually, he had to go to the rear at one point. It was one of the wrecks. I think, the same sort of thing. Actually, exactly the same thing happened at Pocono. I believe him and DJ Daniels may have had contact.
Yep.
So, he's not just had it all his own way. He's had to go out and earn it. And today, even today, he's not had it all his own way. He's had to go out and earn it, and then he's just, okay, I know what my margin is. I'm 6 seconds in the lead. I'm just going to run to 6 seconds in the lead. He doesn't need to set fastest laps of the race at this point in time. He just needs to run laps that don't let Kyle Holden catch him, and he's done exactly that.
I think that's exactly the point right there, too. I think that a big reason why we're seeing chunks taken out of the race lead, Holden's obviously pushing it, but Dobbs is making sure that he just doesn't put a wheel wrong here, just managing the gap. As this time around, out of turn number 7, looking for win number 4 on the season, 3rd win in a row. Alan Dobbs is going to get it done. He'll pick up a road course victory this season as he takes the checkered flag at the Glen. Holden will finish in second, and then we have to wait pretty much an entire full lap for Noah Jackson to come around and capture the final spot on the podium. He was only 4 seconds ahead of race leader Alan Dobbs, who nearly had all but the top 2 off the lead lap. Only the podium finishers are going to finish on the lead lap in this one.
Yeah, great job to all involved. Ran a great race today. You can't take anything away from him, and Kyle immediately mic'd up and said to him as well, great job. You deserve that one today. You ticked all the boxes. And Kyle's only major mistake here today, qualifying. But how critical is qualifying at a road course? You don't get cautions, you don't get the pack back up together. We get 1 caution in that race. Kyle's there, Kyle races him the whole way through. That's the difference.
And a battle for 10th there. Coming to their checkered flag between Ryan Catalano, Chris Roberge. Roberge went around in the bus stop. Looks like he's going to finish in 11th as a result. As Alan Dobbs is going to get... He's gotten pretty used to doing burnouts here, as you said, during the month of April, as he will tack on a 4th victory. Picked up another couple of stage victories here tonight. Dominant performance, maximum points day for the points leader coming into this one, and will continue to extend the points lead between himself and Kyle Holden as they'll take this battle to the Last Great Coliseum at Bristol next week.
Yeah, you got a feel for a number of drivers in the field today. I mean, potential. I really thought today might be the day that Mark actually might have an opportunity to jump in and maybe win it for himself. And I think he'll be frustrated with it. Two mistakes. Gonzalez made 2 mistakes today. He made 1 mistake on the run through the bus stop, and he regathered himself up and he sat right there next to Alan. And, got himself back into it, and then he sped on pit lane. That's the difference between him and victory lane.
And I know you won't do it, so I will. I'll throw you into that category as well, because we saw the run that you had, almost able to run down Holden at the Chicago Street Course. We're on the front row for this one here tonight, and just unfortunate with the fact that there's really were no cautions here tonight, obviously. No track blocking wrecks, so we went green the whole rest of the way. And just no opportunity to be able to come back from the mistake there on the first lap. A couple of drivers, I think, here, like you said, I think that we'll be looking at when we get to our next road course at Sonoma, looking for a little bit of bounce back here and be up in the hunt for a road course victory. Let's take a look at the final finishing results from this one, as finally everybody has come around to complete their respective laps. We'll be talking with our podium finishers, Dobbs, Holden, and Noah Jackson in just a few moments. Trey Whitehead going to bring it home with 4th. Cogswell, another great run in 5th. Patrick McQuaid will finish 6th. Mark Gonzalez battled back from the pit road penalty to finish in 7th. Peyton Holland brings it home 8th. Christian Ruse in 9th. And Ryan Catalano is going to complete your top 10. Chris Robert is the last driver to finish 1 lap down. Matt Mettler 2 laps down in 12th. Scott Rankin 13th. Christopher Reese 9 laps down in the 14th position. Jeffrey Kleinsma was the first driver out of the race, finishing in 15th with Dalton McKenney, Tyler Rice, Dylan McDonald, and Matt Davies, the rest of the drivers that took the green to start this event. You see Thomas Freitas, he was in the server. I believe he left. I don't know if he'll get credit for 20th or not, but there he is on the grid nonetheless, and CJ Papa as well. I thought maybe the 00 and the 13 would start from pit road. They never took the green, so I don't know if they will get credited for those positions or not. They could be unofficial for those 2 drivers, but nonetheless, that is your finishing results from tonight's race, as we will now head into our FRN post-race wind down and get ready to dial up some of our podium finishers here tonight. Let's see if we can kick things off with the driver of the number 20. Let's get a hold of Noah Jackson. Hey, Noah, Scott and Seth up here in the FRN booth. You got a copy?
Yeah, what's up, guys?
Well, we talked about here tonight, just keep the car clean. You were able to do just that. You bring it home solidly on the podium, pretty much running 3rd the entire this race, trying to play catch-up to the 59 and the 35. Was it just a matter of just hitting your marks, keeping that car on the racetrack, and just bring it home on the podium? Or do you think you might have had something if you had track position on the top 2?
Oh, I would have had nothing for Kyle and Allen. They was in their own zip code. Heck, I honestly shouldn't even be within the top 5. Like Scott and everybody else up there, they was fast, but I had a game plan. Me and my crew chief and everybody at DDR, we had a game plan, was to just try to be consistent, not make any mistakes, and just stay out of trouble. But other than that, we had a really good night.
Well, you talk about not having anything for the top 2, but you know, when we talk about Dobbs, we talk about Holden in that battle for the regular season championship, and I know it's obviously very early on here in the season. I mean, we don't even get to the end of the regular season until the fall, but you're sitting there in that 3rd spot. You came into this race 59 points back. Obviously, you lose a little bit of ground, but not much with finishing on the podium here tonight. How important is it to kind of keep those 2 still within striking distance? Do you see some racetracks coming up where you think you might be able to eat into that points lead, maybe make it a 3-driver fight for the regular season championship?
Yeah, there's definitely some hope, but everybody in this league, they're all really good. Anybody can win it any week. Anything can happen. So we're just going to have to keep this momentum up and hopefully be there whenever it counts.
You know, obviously, when we look at you drivers out there, you make it look so easy, but I know that, you know, Scott was talking about some things that you drivers were probably going to have to deal with, some things that he was dealing with that race car. What was one of the key things that you kind of zoned in on here today that was kind of in the forefront of your mind? Because we know that when there's these type of races, we run through the stages, we don't have cautions coming out, no guaranteed yellow going to save you if you make a mistake. What was one particular area of the racetrack, or even maybe something to do with the car, that you kind of kept your mental focus on the whole race to not have that slip up?
Just try not to overdrive the corners on your braking points, because if you did and then you lock the tires up, you're going straight off or into the wall. So just trying to be consistent on hitting your braking points and easy on the throttle, getting out of the corners. It was a big deal tonight.
Well, a good, solid race, bringing it home on the podium, your 4th top 5 on the season, and we'll keep you up on the podium in the point stands as well, heading into the short track of Bristol next week. Noah, congratulations on the great run. We'll give you the opportunity here now for some thank you sponsors and shout-outs.
Yeah, I just like to thank Toyota TRD for giving me a fast car. Everybody at the shop, Caterpillar, um, DDRT, bringing some fast cars every week, and just everybody on this 20 Toyota Camry team, and all my teammates and everybody back at the shop. We're just staying consistent and just got to keep this momentum up.
Noah Jackson, third place here tonight at Watkins Glen. Congratulations on the great performance, keeping that car clean, bringing it home on the podium. Best of luck next week at the Beatin' and Bangin' of Bristol.
Thank you, sir.
Let's see if we can now get a hold of his teammate and dial up the 59 of Kyle Holden. Hey, Kyle, Scott Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
Hey, what's going on, guys?
Oh man, one of the big things that we were talking about pre-race was the fact that there's not a whole lot of fall off with these tires, and that makes track position an optimal thing. Had a little mistake and qualified, started back in traffic. Was that the deciding factor? Were you just basically playing catch up the remainder of this race? And we saw those lap times you laid down the closing stages. Would you have had anything for him? Did you just need more laps?
Yeah, we definitely messed up our qualifying there. Just overcooked that last corner, or the last turn before the last corner, and that's always been my downfall at this track. And just got loose there, didn't get a qualifying time in, so starting from the back was pretty rough. But we were slow. We kind of just slowly went through it. We didn't want to overcharge and push people to, over their capabilities of getting through the corners there. So we took it easy getting through. So that was a little bit part of it, and then. On the last pit stop, I forgot to uncheck my tires. I think I may have even come out in front of Alan if I didn't, but I was at least going to be right there with him, and I think that was the deciding call, is me just not unchecking my tires.
So, going back to the first road course race, we saw you pick up the checkered flag at the Chicago street course, but I remember back on that final lap too, you had an overcooking on the entry to turn 1 on the final lap. So, is it the car with the braking zone issue there, or is it like the weather conditions at the road courses? What's the factor contributing to that? Because that was another thing Scott talked about that a lot of drivers were going to have to pay attention to, was the braking zone and not overcooking the entry.
Yeah, you always got to hit your braking points, but the cold tires on this track are out of this world loose for some reason now, and just kind of threw me off for a loop there. I wasn't expecting it to be that loose. Normally it's somewhat tight, actually. But I guess they changed it a little bit, so I was pretty loose, and I just wasn't expecting it on a fresh track, and the temperature went up for the qualifying run. Later on, we tried to push it as hard as we could, but the car just wouldn't take it anymore. You could only go so fast here.
So you finished second place, solid podium finish. The problem is you finished second place to the driver you're trying to run down for the regular season points lead. Dobbs picking up not only the stage victories, but the overall victory as well. You came into this race 9 points back, but if I look at the racetracks that we've got coming up, we're going to Bristol, a short track. You've got a short track victory at Richmond. We're going to to Talladega. You ran well at Daytona. You were solid in the non-point shootout race. You ran well in the dual races. You ran well in the season opener as well. With tracks like that coming up, do you see a golden opportunity to close that points gap back up?
We'll definitely probably close it up a little bit, but I don't know. I'm not a big fan of Bristol, so it'll be tough there to even pass. With this car now, it's almost impossible. So you'll just kind of be riding in a line, kind of just have your positioning, get good qualifying, and just have good pit stops. Otherwise, you're not going to finish well. Talladega, it's anybody's game. But I definitely love driving those super speedways and, working with some people to get up to the front there. But with this new draft package, it might be a little bit more difficult, but we'll see what we can do.
Well, a great job working your way up through the field to bring it home on the podium in the second position. Kyle, congratulations on the great run here tonight. We'll give you the opportunity here now for some thank you sponsors and shout-outs.
Yeah, huge thanks to you guys up in the booth. Love watching these after the race. Huge thanks for Chris for putting this on. Huge thanks for SimHQ for being on the car. And huge thanks to DJ for letting me be on the team.
Kyle Holden, second place here this evening at Watkins Glen, and he will look to see if he can turn his luck at Bristol Motor Speedway. You didn't hear a whole lot of confidence out of him, but we've heard a lot of drivers say they're not big fans of racetracks and come out on the other side in victory lane. So best of luck to you, Kyle. Hopefully we'll be able to see you maybe back in victory lane as soon as next week.
Appreciate it.
Kyle Holden finishing second place here tonight And let's dial up the guy that has been hot during the month of April. His 4th win on the season, his 3rd win in a row. Let's dial up the driver of the 35 down in victory lane, Alan Dobbs. Hey, Alan, Scott, and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
Yeah, I got you, buddy.
Well, we've dubbed you April Allen because you have absolutely dominated this month. Kicked it off at Kansas and now 3 wins in a row with Iowa, Pocono, and here tonight at Watkins Glen. Here tonight, it kind of seemed like the strategy was just don't put a wheel wrong. The car obviously had speed, had good starting track position. As soon as you got around the 8, you were able to set sail. So what was like the one key point you were thinking about there of don't throw this race win away? Was there a specific area on the racetrack you were worried about? Was it execution on pit road? What were we looking at? Because it looked like a cakewalk from up here, but I'm sure that probably wasn't the case in the cockpit.
Yeah, mostly the braking zones. Like the brakes on this car are just really finicky sometimes, and they're easy to lock up. So I was just trying to make sure that I didn't overcook the entries, and also making sure that I didn't slap the inside of the wall at the bus stop entrance, because I mean you got to get right there on it, and it being in a heavy braking zone, you got a lot of rotation in the car. I was concerned every time I went through there.
So 1.5 miles, short track, 2.5 mile speedway, now road course. You've won on all 4 different type of variations of racetrack outside of Super Speedway, which we'll be at in a couple of weeks' time at Talladega. Next week, we're heading to Bristol. We just talked with a guy that's battling you for that regular season championship, Kyle Holden. He doesn't feel all that confident about that racetrack since it seems to be a track very difficult to pass at, and it's really going to rely on good starting track position. Where are you on the confidence level heading into that historic short track?
Well, I like Bristol. I run well there. He is right that track position is very important. It's really hard to pass unless you're significantly faster. It's not a very easy place to save tires. You're gonna have to deal with fall off. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, if you get a good qualifying lap and you don't make mistakes and you hit your pit stops and do everything right, it can be a pretty easy race to get through. But one little mistake, you get back in the pack, and it becomes a whole nother ball game.
We got 3 more road courses coming up here on the schedule. We've got Sonoma a little later on. We've got near the close of this regular season, Road America, and then of course we've got the Charlotte Roval that's kind of plunked right in the middle of the playoffs. You had a 3rd place performance back at the Chicago Street Course. You bring it home with the victory here at Watkins Glen. So, you know, with those racetracks coming up, Sonoma's a track that a lot of drivers have turned laps at. Road America, maybe not quite as much. And then in maybe the last 6 years, a lot of drivers have turned laps at the Charlotte Roval. So, you know, with what we've seen out of the road course program with this 35, what are you looking at here as far as strengths and weaknesses of those 3 racetracks? Or do you think that we could maybe see the 35 battling for the checkered flag at all 3 of them?
I hope to be in the conversation at all 3 of them. Honestly, the only reason I'm sitting here today is because Kyle messed up his qualifying, and I think he would have been able to get it. He was good with not changing tires. I changed tires both pit stops. He said he messed up and changed them one, or he might have beat me. But Sonoma, I like a lot. It's really technical, so I'm pretty confident with the top 3 there. Same for Road America. The Roval is a little bit more of a head scratcher. I'm not sure if we're going to be running the old layout, the new layout. I haven't run any laps on the new layout, so I don't even know what to expect there. I guess we'll just have to see as it comes and see what we get. If it's the new layout, I'm going to have to actually do some practice.
Well, Alan, congratulations not only on the victory here tonight, but an incredible month of April. Your 4th win on the season. You'll carry the points lead into Bristol next week. We'll give you the opportunity now for some victory lane. Thank you, sponsors and shoutouts.
just shout out to my beautiful wife, all the guys at Hubka Motorsports, Grind, Adrenaline Rush, you guys for the broadcast, all the admins. Yeah, thanks everybody.
That's Alan Dobbs. He brings it home with the victory here tonight, his 4th checkered flag of the season. He sweeps the Glen with stage wins and the overall victory. Congratulations once again, and best of luck next week at Bristol.
Thanks, man. Have a good one.
Alan Dobbs with his 3rd straight checkered flag on the season, and you heard him say there, Scott, probably wouldn't have won this race if Kyle Holden didn't have that deficit of track position. Both these drivers talking about track position being important next week at Bristol. Will be interesting to see how much emphasis they put on qualifying when we get to the last great Coliseum as this back and forth continues between these two for that overall points lead.
I mean, the races are long enough that it isn't everything, but it is certainly helps a lot. But you know, as much as Alan said, I wouldn't have won this one without the track position. I mean, that's the case, but it's the same for everybody in the field. You look at Mark, you look at myself, you look at 2 drivers who qualified on the front row, beat him to turn 1. Neither of them finished ahead of him. So as much as he says it's track position, it's also about running. The difference that I see between Alan and Kyle in the field right now is that racecraft. And we've seen a hole in it from Kyle here tonight. We've seen holes from it from Alan in the past. There are windows of opportunity that these guys give you, but when you get a window, you gotta slam that deficit closed. And I think that puts a little bit more pressure on the guys that are around them because they've got to nail it. They're only going to get one chance, and they have to nail it. So, as much as he can sit there and he can say it really is all about track position, the guy won the race. It is. If Kyle was ahead of him, but Kyle makes a mistake, Alan still wins the race, So as much as he said, yeah, look, it is about track position. You still got to run all 60 laps. You got to run them quick. You got to make no mistakes on pit lane. You got to do this. You got to do that. But he ticked every single box tonight, and that's the big difference between himself and the field. Was he the quickest driver? No, he wasn't the quickest driver in the field here tonight. But was he the most consistent? Absolutely. And therein lies the difference. And I'm talking about consistency, not just in the race, but in qualifying as well. I made a point of watching Kyle's qualifying before I went out and did my qualifying laps. I made a big point about doing them because it was like, okay, where is he pushing hard? How much risk is he possibly taking? I knew the instant he got that off track down in turn 1. I knew straight away because I was there and I was watching. And I can tell you, Kyle would have known the instant he tipped that car into turn 1, he knew. He knew that he was sailing off because he was just that fraction too deep. So, as much as Alan will protest that, hey, it is about track position, he earned that track position by his consistency and his willingness and his ability to just peg himself back just a little bit to make sure that he gets the job done.
Well, Holden got the victory at the Chicago Street Course. Dobbs gets the win here tonight at Watkins Glen. So we're 1-1 for the two battling for that overall points lead. And we may get the rubber match between these two. We got to wait until June, middle of June, when we get to the West Coast in the Napa Valley at Sonoma before we kind of settle that one out. Still got some racetracks, some very unique racetracks, very difficult racetracks in between now and then, beginning next week when we get to the last great Coliseum of Bristol Motor Speedway. You were going down that checklist earlier about, what the do's and don'ts of Bristol is. I think one of them that we'll be talking about next week as well, they'll be pretty close to the top of the list, is don't make enemies, because not only do you want to reach the conclusion of the Bristol race, but you want to have some drafting partners willing to work with you, have some allies willing to work with you when we get to Talladega the following week. But it's going to be a lot of fun to follow the storylines when we get to that short track next week in Bristol, Tennessee. But a great one here tonight at Watkins Glen. Green flag from start to finish. Dobbs dominating here tonight. Maximum points as he wins stages 1 and 2. Gets the checkered flag. We'll have to wait and see just how much of a points gap he was able to grow between himself and Holden, who brings it home in second place. It was 9 points between the two coming into tonight. We'll see what it looks like when we get to Bristol next week. But Scott, great one here tonight. A little bit more of a traditional road course, a little bit more traditional in terms of strategy and everything here outside of the street course at Chicago. Appreciate you joining me up here in the booth for this one, doing the double duty here tonight once again.
No, pleasure as always, Seth. I love these guys. I love these cars. I love this series. So this one's always just a pleasure to be around.
Absolutely appreciate everybody tuned into our coverage here tonight. Hope you all enjoyed it. Next time that we'll be coming live to you will be next Wednesday night here, continuing on the 2025 season for the Esports Oval League's Grind Cup Series from the Bristol Motor Speedway. Green flag scheduled to fly at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Do not miss it. We will see you guys next week. For Scott Rankin, I am Seth Cole. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday evening as you've been watching another broadcast courtesy of FRN, the Flatout Racing Network.
A 12-minute timer has been set, and it will go off at 1:04.
This broadcast is the copyrighted work of Flatout Racing Network and may not be rebroadcast, retranslated, or used in any form without the express written consent of Flatout Racing Network and iRacing.com Motorsports Simulations. Flatout Racing Network would like to thank you for your support, and we hope you enjoyed tonight's broadcast.